Thanks, Nan. Do we have any volunteers to write up a paragraph about our Roman study group tonight? It would be great. Okay, Susan will do it. Thank you, Susan Mentis. Appreciate that. And Wendy appreciates that for the newsletter. I did want to mention that if you're not a chapter member of any of the chapters, you're missing out on newsletters, etc. So if you do want to join one of the chapters, just let us know and we'll make sure. You can join up to 2 chapters. You'll get early announcements about events and newsletters and invitations for other extracurricular things. All right, so with that, I think the only announcements I have is we have Barbara Close teaching for 8 weeks Romans in January and February. It's on a weeknight in California. And she's probably going to let everybody in that's on the waiting list. So if you're hesitating to sign up just because it's full, please do. And then we'll offer to whoever she allows in, but I think it's going to be everyone. And then Risa Gettler. Risa just joined our call. Risa's going to be teaching Visigothic versals in March, April. I got her information and I will be opening that for registration very soon. And that is, we're talking about how many weeks? Right now it's 6 weeks. And I just want to say, Risa, make sure you've got to do the work. You can't just attend and not do anything. So keep that in mind. And Risa's very generous with her help. She will even give one-on-one for to help get your pieces beautiful as you'd like. So great, Risa. We're looking forward to that. All right. So let me just spotlight myself. Or actually, I'm not going to spotlight myself. I'm going to go right to the camera and hopefully you've printed the exemplar. And I will spotlight the camera actually. Okay. Let's get this going here. So one thing that had really, I had always had problems with was I would do the exemplars and then I would find different letters. They aren't all the same. And I always thought Romans were Romans, and that's, I learned them from my teachers through the Society for Calligraphy. And also we had, John Rafter through the local community college. He had studied with Donald Jackson. I just thought Romans were Romans, but once I've started making exemplars, I look at things and then somebody will ask about them or I'll see them in another book and they're different. So this Ellen Mott Jablonski recommended this book, Step-by-Step Calligraphy, because I had mentioned Sue Houghton. And I had this book on my shelf, but I had used it for italic. I had not noticed that Romans were in here. So I have so many books. I don't go through every page on the book, unfortunately, and I'm trying to go through more these days. Let me, I'm going to back up a little on this camera so I can get more of this exemplar in. Anyway, when I went through Sue's book, I read what she had to say. I compared what she had with Sheila Waters and with Peter Thornton. And they all have something a little different. Even though these are all British calligraphers, they still have something a little different. And so I made a note. I only found one that used the K moved over. So here's this stem is not right on the edge of the half box. Sue Houghton, was it Sue or was it Peter? Let me find my Peter Thornton exemplar. Yeah, it's Peter. Peter's got it moved over, not right on the half. But what threw me is I was looking at Sheila's first, and then I was looking at Sue's, and I thought, oh no, I've got this wrong. I never noticed. And then, whew, I found Peter's. So it's just a difference in the way they write them. And there is one point where I learned, and I've read it since, that some people do the K as a 3/4, a wide. And we were talking before we started, Sue Mentis was mentioning that she and Margaret in Canada were talking about the X's and Y's. I've got the wide ones. Peter's got the wide ones. I think Sue Houghton has the wide ones. And Sheila has the narrow ones. So all I'm saying is pick which ones you like. And I have to say, sometimes I like Sheila's narrow ones. So I may add these to the exemplars as options. We'll see how much room I have. But I may just start playing around with these. I think at some point I knew the narrow X and Y, but I have seen the wider ones much more often. And there is also this rounded J and the longer J. And I told myself I liked the longer J better. But then when I was working on a piece yesterday, the rounder, shorter J came in handy. So just know those are your options. And I will put more notes on this exemplar. So we're going to go through this exemplar right now. And I do want to tell you, feel free to unmute and ask if you have any questions and we can address them. And I've got a piece of paper to write with, but I think I'm mainly first going to talk about this exemplar and what I learned in my research through Sue Houghton's book, and then referencing the other master. They're all masters, so I'm willing to take any of them because they know what they're doing. So what Sue said is there are a geometric basis for these letters. I'm just going to admit someone here. Okay. And so what she did is she did these stacked charts. And that's what threw me, because then I'm looking at these charts and I'm saying, mine don't look like that. And I actually stacked my letters and they didn't fit like hers. And you'll look at my stacks on here and they aren't all perfectly lined up. Or they are perfectly lined up, but they don't look like hers. So that's when I started doing a lot more reading, looking at I was gathering exemplars from all over just to see, did I have to redo my K and some of my other letters. For a moment, I thought I had to redo my P and my R. So I will talk about those. But what I read is she said, and so did in so many words, Peter Thornton, these are geometric letters and don't let them restrain you. What Sue said is, so she made the S, the top of the S and the top of the P and R. It's a slightly smaller square for the geometric. So I'm going to show that right here. If I have a square and a half a square And the way I've done S is I had a full circle, and then I drew the S on top of it. And I do distinctly remember a workshop with Sheila Waters in San Diego. And she said, and this was an italic class, but italic is based on Romans. She said, the S is the same size. The top of the S is the same size as the bottom. It's just that the stroke extends out further on the S, and I'm exaggerating. I put it way out there. It's not that far, but it extends further and the top does not extend as far. So it looks smaller, but it's actually not. So that's what I've been going on. And plus I never learned to make it smaller. But Sue, she makes hers just slightly smaller. She makes a tiny box within, and her S is within that box, the top of the S, and then the bottom fills up the whole box. So when you draw your S, the bottom is slightly smaller. And I don't think that looks bad. But she did the same thing with the top of the P and the top of the R, and they are very small folds.
So I was studying with Beth Lee on Tuesday night, and hers is actually slightly larger. Her S.
Yeah. So
it feels like different people do it differently, don't you think?
Yes, definitely. And I did just take that class with Beth Lee, but I don't remember that. But you know what? Each class that we all, the teacher says different things and we all hear different things. So I'll have to review my notes. But I studied with Reggie Ezell, and so did Sharon, who was just talking. And what I really learned from Reggie, and that's where I've got some bigger bowls, and I may actually make this a little smaller, but I got this from Reggie. And what he would say on some of these, and this is probably what Sharon's referring to, some of these Reggie, let's say the S, maybe Reggie had you come just to the edge on the top and maybe just to the outside of the edge on the bottom. I can't say it was actually the S, but quite a few letters, especially like a K. You would do the K, and then the top one would be inside the line, and the bottom one would come outside that half line. So it would be slightly bigger on the bottom of the K, slightly smaller on the top. And the R, I think some of these, that's where that came from, is this bowl came to the outside of the line. The B, the top comes to the inside, but the bottom comes to the outside of the line, just barely piercing the line. And this one, it's kissing the line. So those are where I got my capitals because I studied with Reggie recently. I learned them originally from other teachers, but Reggie was the most current. And so, but also Reggie did things that I didn't particularly like, but I'm sure they are right. He knows what he's doing. He would have us make the O slightly wider than tall. And it was an optical illusion, he said. But I didn't learn that way, so I did it for his assignments, but I did not take that up. I had learned a circle, and I'm looking at all my references here, they're a circle. So what I'm getting from this is we take what works for us. I also was reading about the Trajan column, and some of their letters are wider on the top than on the bottom, but that's because you're looking at it from below, and the optical illusion, it looked correct when you're looking on it from below. So these all serve different purposes. So I wanted to share that. I really panicked when I was working on my exemplar, thinking I had done it all wrong. And I thought, where did I get this? I know I used references to make my exemplar. So I felt much better once I read Sue's. And so she said, do not stick with this. She thinks these bowls are too small. So she draws them that way. And I'm looking at the picture. But when I start reading her columns of writing, she's saying these really appear too small. So they're a reference, a geometric reference, but she says use what looks best. And what Peter Thornton says, here are his. He's got these, he comes here and then he's got this straight line. And here's the R coming below the line also. And it's touching the outside of the square, although it starts over, it doesn't go the whole half. But he says, these are the formal letters and you don't want to be stuck with the formal letters. You want to give them personality. And so I wrote that on the exemplar. So here's Peter's exemplar from Formal Romans. And here's Peter's exemplar of the way I want my Romans to look. There, and I had also learned put the bowl heavier at the top, not at the bottom. So that's where that comes from. And I'm so glad it took me all this time to learn that. And while I studied Romans with Peter, I studied funky Romans. I didn't do the class where he covered the basics of traditional Romans and going from there. So, well, and he may have talked about this, but I was busy focusing on the other fun, funky Romans. So I did not get this till now. I'm really looking at them, comparing and wanting to know this, and it's really sinking in. Any
Kristi,
questions?
yeah, Kristi,
Yes.
wouldn't you have to be very careful that you didn't mix and match letters that are in the same family?
Normally I would say that's what you do, but then I'm looking at Sue's, and she's got that small K, but yet she's got those big X and Y. So that's what I learned the same family, but she changed the families. Here's her family. Her K is in the family with E and F, where I think I originally learned it as in the family with X and Y. So it's just a change in families. But yes, you do want to keep that in mind.
Yeah, so if you do make a K like that K, then you need to remember that your E and your F have got to be of the same shape.
Yeah, the same width. And that's what I've got on here. Although I found a few nuances after I did my exemplar. They just aren't that obvious to start out with, and they're not the way I learned, but the way Sue does it, and I think Peter does it, and maybe Sheila, they have their bottom stroke a little bit longer. So, and I think the top one and sometimes the middle one were shorter. So though I'm going to study that some more, and I may be modifying my exemplar, but the way I learned it, they were all the same. I'm going to turn a light on here. They were all the same width. Kristi. Yes,
Have you looked at John Stevens' work or been in his class on Romans?
I have not. I've taken his italic. But you know what? Maybe you took it with him, because when I took italic, he didn't cover basics.
Yeah, I
He
did, but
covered do whatever looks good. That's the way he teaches. And of course, his stuff does look good. Maybe if you took the one at conference, maybe he covered the basics. Did you take that with him?
well, I took his online class a few years ago, but I'm looking at his brush lettering book, Roman
Yeah.
brush lettering.
Yeah, I've got that too.
Yeah, on page 47, it's the proportion grid with all the letters. And even before you get there, if you just look at several alphabets he had before that that were monoline or close to it, he goes wide, just as a matter of reference.
Yeah, and so that's John Stevens, and I
Right.
love his work, so I will get that book out and study that too. But I'm thinking at some point I have to narrow down my sources or I'll be all over the place.
Well, that's for sure.
So thank you. I have that book. I bought it at conference and I have barely cracked it open, but I will crack it open now. And I will also get my Reggie book back out and study that some more. Yeah, so I just found this very fascinating that these three English masters all did these a little differently. And I also found it very fascinating that this geometric stacking was not the way we're supposed to be writing them. It's just good to know. It just really scared me looking at that. And then when I stacked mine, they just didn't stack like that. But you know what? It really made me examine my letters more carefully. And I may make a few changes. I like my E's. I always learn put your F above the center line and the crossbar, and the E crossbar below E above, F below. But you know, looking at all these samples, I think I've got them too far below, too far above, too far below. They should be more kissing the line. I'm looking at Sue's, and hers is a little bit similar, but mine's a little bit wider. So twice as wide actually, I think, as hers. And if I look at Peter's, and later I'll share Peter's with you. He has given permission. I'll do a lesson on and we'll cover Peter's, but he has the F just barely. He has the E just barely, it's touching the halfway. It's sitting right on top of the halfway. And the F is just right below that, immediately below that. So they don't have much of any space in there, just like a sliver of light. So it's also interesting just seeing those little nuances. And his K, the point there is above the halfway point, where if I look at Sheila's, I think hers was on the halfway, and I think that Sue Hupton's, well, her geometric was halfway. Maybe a smidgen difference. So anyway, just very, very interesting. And I encourage anybody to get out these books and study them. You know, we need to, for me, I need to have a focus, something I'm looking for if it's going to sink in. If I'm in a class and we're writing our letters, I'm listening to the teacher, sometimes just certain things, I remember them. But as reading, I'm not as focused and picking up all these nuances, all these slight differences. I'm just kind of looking at the pictures. And now with Sue, I'm really reading it. And I will continue to read it. And so I've got my stacked letters here, and I made them all different colors. I think you've got a slightly different one. I think this is my old one. I had a smaller P, because I think I learned that with, or maybe it was a bigger P, smaller R. I think I learned that with one teacher. But I'm looking at Peter, Susan, and Sheila, and I think they've got the same bowl on the P and the R. So I'm going to study that some more. That may change. Any more comments on that? And this book, I found it used and the price was, well, no, this one I had, but I think I looked online just to, for reference for other people. And they have used copies out there at reasonable prices. So if you look around, there's Amazon, Libris is another site. There's other bookstores, and sometimes if you look around, you'll find them at different prices. All right, and so next time we will talk more about spacing with Sue's. I find this so helpful. Sheila talks about spacing one way, Annie Sakali talks about it another way, and Sue talks about it differently, but they're all based on the same concepts. They just approach it differently, and it really helped my understanding. So we'll cover that at another point. Okay, and skeletons are great for learning. And I love the press and release for some applications. And there's a few applications for skeleton, but mostly it's when we're adding the weight to the strokes that it gets more interesting.
Kristi, will you explain stacked a little bit more?
Okay, yes.
Are you talking about stacked in terms of,
I put the letters on top of each other. So
yeah,
one
okay.
thing, I took italic with several teachers, and it took me a long time. I was never that happy with my italic. And it was when I took a class with Carrie E. Mai, and one thing she did was she put the letters one on top of each other, and she put every letter, the entire alphabet, on top of each other and showed how they all just fit. That was her italic. Now I did that expecting the same results with this Roman, and I didn't have the same results, and that's why I panicked with the K. So I think that was Carrie's italic. Probably if I looked at other people's italic, I might find some differences. So here I have the O, and I made the O black, but they're stacked on top of each other, so it's not always that obvious. But then I made the C blue, and you can see the strokes coming out flatter for the C. And then for the G, they're flatter. And here's the Q. It's the same as the O, but it's got the stroke. And one thing I want to say, I think I am going to do a separate handout with these stacked like this, but Sue explained why some things were different or the same. I found that so helpful. So I think I probably will make a separate handout based on what I learned from her. And then here's your V and your A. You can see the A is just the V is an upside down A without the crossbar. And the H is above. And again, I may redo this and bring the H a little bit further down because some of the instructors have them closer to the halfway, and I may do that. And some have the A slightly higher. And I'll have to decide, am I going to do that? But studying Sue's geometric letters and her explanation of that, I'm going to go with that if I change those, because those crossbars are referenced when you figure out spacing, etc. And here's the U. So this is not Well, I did this U. It's based on the circle. It's not the one I use when I do my own lettering. I mean, I'm a little more cutting corners, etc. A little more smooth looking to me, but that is the geometric U, just following the circle and then going into the straight. And then when you were talking about the X and the Y, that's where I saw, well, I do these slightly different than Sue does, and maybe differently than Peter and Sheila also. All the centers were, well, the X is above the center. And if you look at Sue's, they are all stacked and they all match. Let's see, where is Sue's? I set the book aside and now I don't know where it is. I have them all stacked here. But anyway, when they all, in her stacking, all the points in the center met. Well, it's a good thing she talked about the geometric, because the way I learned it, the X is higher, the center point on the X is higher so that the top looks smaller. And so here's my X here. It's smaller on the top than on the bottom, slightly, not a lot. And the way I learned to get that from Reggie was I come just inside these 3/4 lines on the top and I come just outside of them on the bottom. That's how I get my difference. But it's higher. And the Y, somewhere along the line, I learned to make the Y just the point just under that halfway. But I'm looking at these experts, and maybe they're not doing that. So I need to do some research on that. So this stacking, I really like this because it really pointed out things I'm doing differently than they are. So, and then here's the T, and it just goes down the center. So all these letters, N, so you've got the crossbar on the N, it goes halfway down the center. All of these, and the Z goes the other way. Its diagonal goes the other way down the center. And they just didn't all exactly line up. But you know what? I drew these by hand, and they're not perfect. And that's one reason we like calligraphy, that it's not so rigid and machine-like.
So you're suggesting trying to stack just to see how your letter forms correlate in that family.
I
As
found
a-
it useful.
Yeah.
For me, it was very useful. And I've seen this done, but I never did it myself and saw how they don't match up. But then I read Sue's thing, and not everything has to be machine-like. To look at her stacking, it looks like it was done with a ruler and a compass. It's so rigid. And she says it's geometric. It's not what you want your final letters to look like. And then one more I wanted to reference was the M and the W. And for a minute, I thought I wasn't doing my M correctly, but I read about it and I am, although some people might bring the bottom to halfway of this square out here, and they might halfway. So this is the outer 1/8. I wish this was a little more focused. It's not as focused as I would like, but so here's the outer 1/8, and here's the inner 1/8 and the outer 1/8. I might want to modify mine. Mine come to the outside of the square and to the inside of the square, but maybe I want it to come slightly more on the bottom. So this is all minor stuff. The letters look real decent when I draw them, but they could maybe look better. And when we took Beth Lee's class, she definitely, I think, had a little more slant to the outside of her outer legs. So that would be that, just that little extra on both sides.
You know what? She definitely did. And the other thing, I've always struggled with getting my legs to be exactly the same
Yeah,
distance.
mine aren't.
Yeah, but you know what she talked about Tuesday night? She said to start with a V for the M and then draw your legs. She did
Yeah.
a dot for the base of each leg on the M, and it was so much easier for me that way.
Yeah.
That
In
might
fact,
help somebody else.
Margaret Burgess, who's on this call, also, she told me that's what she does. And so that's something to try. Thank you, Sharon. I had never had a teacher suggest that. Margaret suggested it, and so that's something to try. And then the W. So if you look at Sue's book, and I'm thinking Peter's too, they put two V's together, and this is called W, and the V was what the V was the U way back when. So, but I read that it can be narrower, and I think I like it a little narrower as I did my research, and I think Sue said it could be narrower. I'm reading these three people's writings, and I think it was Sue who said it, but it could have been Sheila or Peter, but I'm looking at Peter's, and his definitely looks like two V's. It's wide. Although here's his V he actually uses, his W he actually uses, and they are narrower. So I decided after much research to stick with my narrower V. So this is my stacked M and V. Okay, and I'll probably add the different J in here because I did find that useful. I like this one, but I can see using the different J too. And many of us, when we make a J, we make it lower, but in Romans, everything is one square high. So it would be a different alphabet to make it longer. Okay, any other questions? And one more that's different is how slanted this leg is. The way I try to make it is I start right up here and come down, but I usually come right outside this square. And I think, oh no, but I'm coming further. And I looked at, I think it was Sheila's, and she comes out further. So I'm going to play and see which one I decide that I want to be my final R. This will be my exemplar that I will use for mine, but I'm still in the process of perfecting it, and you'll want to come up with your own exemplar.
So we'll each have kind of like our personalized set of Romans when we pick out which ones we want to include in our own exemplar.
If you did that, yeah. I mean, I always in the past just use the exemplar the teacher gave me, but now I'm just learning so much that I want to do the letters that I choose. And
I'm seeing that from your explanations and you pointing out different things, making us more aware of the nuances. And I can see how it would be useful to go ahead and take from this eventually and come up with your own exemplar. And then you have your own stylized version of Romans.
And I have to say, I've learned so much making this. My first exemplar I made when I taught, I led a program for the Orange County group like 2 decades ago, I think. well, maybe 15 years ago. That was my first exemplar and I still have it, and to look at it is just so, some of the letters are the same, and actually some of them I thought I did more neatly than this one, but I just learned so much since. And I'm still, I'm gonna play with the wider K and see, maybe I wanna keep that as an option, but I don't know. At some point I thought I like the narrower letters. So that's what I chose on here originally.
Do you think you'd mix up the narrower and wider letters based on your piece? You're doing a long text, maybe?
Yeah, I think, you know what? So Risa was on here and maybe still is. So we do the Visigothic versals with her, and one thing you do is you justify those left and right. And sometimes she gives us various options from history, and we choose the one we want that will fit, give us the length we want. It'll give us rhythm. She has us go through, and there's different shapes that are centered, and we're choosing based on those. So I could see if I wanted something to be justified or just longer or shorter, I could choose a K based on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I found it very, very helpful to take that Visigothic versals, because we learned things in there that we didn't learn with straight Romans. Okay, so with that, I think I'm going to move on. I think that's all we need to cover on Romans tonight, unless somebody wants me to actually write a certain one. Otherwise, I want to go on to ligatures. And I have pictures that, and I have them here. So let me share the screen. Can I make this? I want to maximize it, but it doesn't look like it. Okay, I can drag it. I don't have a green dot. Okay, so you can all see that. I don't hear anybody, but so I assume
Yes,
you
yes,
all
we
see
can.
that? Okay, thank you. So some of you know that I worked in the Netherlands for a number of years, and I got to know Liesbet Boudens. She was in Bruges, and it was about a 4.5 hour drive. So sometimes on the weekends, I would drive and stay with her and her family, and we'd just go look at art and other things and do whatever, explore. But before I met Liesbet, I did go to Bruges by myself one weekend, and Carl Rohrs he's the one that had introduced me to her work. And I went to a shop he told me about that sold her work. And she had gold on her pieces. They were her originals. They were spectacular, but the price was also spectacular. And this was this was more than 15 years ago, probably 17 years ago, and one of her pieces was like 1,200 euros, and a euro was about 40% more expensive than an American dollar, and I couldn't even get that much money out of the ATM if I had wanted to pay that. But so I talked to the proprietor, and she had some prints, and these were prints from Liesbet, and I bought them. And what I really wanted to show was the use of ligatures that she's got. And I'll ask her permission whether I can share these with you, but you can take a screen print. I want to I mean, I'll ask her permission if she minds if I send an image out to all of you. But I wanted to point out some of these ligatures, which are not the usual ligatures we see, but you can see a mix here. And these are her old pieces. Her new pieces do not look like this. She's gone on a different, she just keeps evolving. Her letters keep evolving and they're just so interesting. This one, she mixed the lowercase look with the uppercase, and I can't tell if this is pointing or not, but can you see that I down a second line from the bottom? It's the bottom of the I is attached to the bottom of the K.
Yep.
We
And
can
then
see
the-
you're pointing to.
You can?
Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So let's start over here. So that L goes, so the word is onlukenda, which I know that's bad pronunciation, but the L, it doesn't actually touch. It goes up, but it does not touch. The I at the top touches, the I at the bottom touches, the bottom of the K goes to the E goes to the N shares a stem with the D. And you don't look at this and think it looks crowded. It's just interesting. And you don't even notice it till you really start looking. And here's the R. It goes right into the stem of the S. It looks like it actually could be forming the stem of the S. And an R kicking the O. And that's one reason these are so lively. The R's kick up, the K's kick. The E's are this fun little it's curl. And I have to say, when I first took Liesbet's class, I replicated a lot of these letters and I did the whole thing for 2 days. It was a 3-day class. And then I said, you know what, this looks more like Liesbet's work and it doesn't look like my own. And I started over and tried to use my own Roman shapes rather than Liesbet's shapes. So I love these, but I didn't think they looked like my work. So I didn't use them. And here's a lowercase b, a minuscule b, and it's hitting the E. And this is, I've seen this recently. It's been pointed out to me, this N going to the R. I think it's in like Beth Lee's class and Mike Gold's class. They point out how these ligatures happen from one line to the line below it. And so I'm really noticing those now. And look at this P with this F. Any questions, comments on this?
Yeah, those two B's that you pointed out in the middle, Kristi, the lowercase b and the capital B on
Uh-huh.
top of each other. Isn't that awesome how she planned that so that she wouldn't have a replication that would be boring to your eye?
Yeah.
I think it's so cool.
Thanks for pointing that out. And here's this L that just comes around and then goes into the O. So just so fun. This one it's just fun. She has much more serious work. A lot of her work's more serious, but it still has that liveliness. And then I'm going to show another one that I bought at the same time. So this one, it's what it's saying, the translation is talking to the apple blossoms, never have seen a more cheerful red than the pale red of the apple blossoms in the morning. So that's what that one's saying, that open in the morning. And then I'm gonna open this one up. Is it not gonna let, yeah. So this is one I bought at the same time, and the literal translation is the flowers speak their language. But when I have talked to Liesbet about it, the way we translate it, she says these are old Dutch. They're by an old a long dead poet. And it basically says, I speak the language of the flowers.
Kristi?
Is the
Yes.
poet the GG?
Yeah,
Yeah, I was
his
just,
name will
I was
be
just
on
gonna
one.
ask what that GG is, because it was in the previous piece as well.
Yeah, so I will show you another piece that actually has his name spelled out. Okay, so, but look at this J, look at the M comes down and touches the D. And then the J, and so the D has to come up high to meet that stem on the M. And you notice that stem it's meeting is not the longest stem. So she's filling this space with a longer stem. And then the J is that flatter J coming down and hitting the E. And the curve of the R, these aren't kicking like the last bunch. It's curved out, touches, forms a serif on the M. There's a serif there, and it's the curved serif there. And look at the tops of this M, how fun. These are all heading that way, but they're really tall here to fill up that blank space.
I have a question. Do you think she's sketching this out, drawing it out, hand lettering and sketching it out before
Yeah.
she?
Yeah, I can talk about that. And let me turn up my sound because you're a little quiet. Okay. So I did take the class with her, and these are sketched out. Now, the last one we looked at, I thought we could do this like we learned with Beth Lee. We could do this with built up Romans, but they're more whimsical. But the way Liesbet does them, so you can do skeleton Romans to start. You do your thumbnail and design them. And then you start adding your weight, and you do it small because you want to have time to make a lot of changes. If you started with a piece this big, it would take you forever to make adjustments. You start with a small thumbnail size and you get it to where you're happy with it and you've got your weight in there, etc. And then you blow it up. And not to this size, you're just blowing it up like maybe 150% or 200%. It's up to you how many times you've done this in the past, how confident you are. And then you're correcting everything you see at that bigger size. And you blow it up in increments, and you're doing that till you get to the size you want. And then, this is all on tissue paper. And then you put the graphite on the back and you trace it onto your final paper. And these are painted with gouache. And where every other instructor I've studied with painted with a brush, she paints with a broad edge pen and just goes up to the edges. So it's kind of, she paints like if you didn't know what you were doing and you just saw somebody doing built up letters, it kind of looks like she's doing built up letters, but she's just filling in her outlines that she's made. And then when she's finished, she sometimes goes back when it's completely dry and adds white chalk pencil to add texture to it. It's light, it's not that obvious. This one doesn't look like it has it on it, but she does that to give texture to many of her pieces. So yes, these are drawn. And I'm gonna make some suggestions for a project for us that we could choose how we wanted to do it. Do we want to do built up capitals, or do we want to do drawn capitals? But we've been doing a lot of skeletons, and it would be nice to move to some regular Romans in a small piece, because this is a study group and we don't, just something small. And then if you wanted to take it bigger, you definitely could, but it's a start for a piece. Any other questions on this one? And just look at all these serifs. So pretty much she keeps this the same. If they've got serifs on them, they have serifs throughout. I think one thing that really appealed to me with Liesbet's are these O's. And for a while, I made my O's like that. And I wonder if I unconsciously got them after seeing them in the gallery in Bruges. I don't know. But I'm looking at them now and I'm thinking, well, those look like the O's I used to draw. And I sometimes still draw them. I think I kind of got away from them because when I did my piece, Liesbet would say it looked like another letter, the way I drew it. I think maybe I made it slightly different and it looked like an E, so I got away from that. And here is, look at this fun crossbar on the A. And I just noticed that John Stevens is going to offer in November and December a class on inventing letters. And I thought, look, this is one of her Liesbet's specialties, inventing letters. Look at this ligature right here, the two joined serifs, and actually the T-A-A-L. And here's the E just comes right into the N. And that E's have that swelling there, and so it just fit perfectly with that N. And here, up here, you've got that swelling too, where the E and the K, they don't just hit and stop. They have that graceful curve leading into it. And look at this serif go straight up, and this one kicks to the side of the page. And these go off. This goes off. It's balanced with this one going off. And this E, the serif touches the page. This one doesn't. They're not all, it's not all repetition. And I'm thinking about the class we're taking with Mike Gold. He's very into things touching the sides. He loves that. For our class is composition. So that's something to look at. Any questions before I move to the next one? Since it was asked who the artist is, and I'm sorry I closed my blinds, but the blinds still showed. But this is Guido Gazzella, and he was a long ago. Well, I don't know how long ago. I looked it up once. I don't remember, but it's Old Dutch. And so when I translated this, if you translate this literally, it says, I miss you, cousin, my cousin. But that's not what it means. Because it's Old Dutch, it actually means I miss you beside me. Because when I translated, I miss you, my cousin, I thought, I don't think that's something Liesbet would choose to put all this effort into making a piece. And so I contacted her and she told me I miss you beside me. So we can look here. There's just a few ligatures on this one right there, the M and the J. And that one, the other one had that J coming down. This is the J curving around, and then the serif goes and touches the M. And so this one, this S could have been touching, but it's not. She's not. And I think it's because it would be a thick against the thick. She just has it kind of follow the line of the S. She doesn't have it touch. Any other questions? And look, this K doesn't reach down and touch this. These are two mirror images of the same thing. It doesn't have it touch. It could, but she has it just kind of going in the same direction, the serif. Just much less in the way of ligatures on this one. And look at this fun one, this F. Well, that's an E, actually. I thought it was an F at first. It's an E. And then here's this F with a different shape.
And that's the author, the GG author?
Yeah, Guido Gazzella. But his writing's all in Dutch, as we said, it's quite a long time ago. And I don't know that they all knew English. If you go to Holland, if you go to the Netherlands and Belgium, Southern Belgium, they probably don't speak English, or some do. Northern Belgium, most people speak English. And in Holland, in Netherlands, almost everyone speaks English. Okay, and then I was going to show a couple more. This one is all wild and spectacular flowers along the canal. And this is again Guido Gazelle. So this whole series of prints that she did were of his poetry. And let me enlarge this. And you can see, look at that N, how that, look at that. So the W touches the top of the E touches the N. Again, it's got a curved line for a smooth transition. And then the N goes down and touches the serif of the R. And they have these fun E's
I
over
really
there.
like how wide they are.
Yeah. And what was really fun is Liesbet's son, her two sons are both artistic. Her son did a little, when he was a small child, wrote an E, and it had about five cross strokes. And they all took off after that. They all started using, so here she's coming up higher and she doesn't have five cross strokes, but she continues the E up. Liesbet's brother, Christoffel, started using that 5-stroke E, and then Brody started using that 5-stroke E. And I just think with this upper, the stroke extending, that's influenced by her son. And then here you see the N, the serifs are joined. The V comes down and touches the serif on the P. The serif of the E touches. Again, the R. But they aren't all touching. That R is not coming over and touching the V. She's putting a little breathing space in there. But the V and the A share a stroke. And again, the A and the L share the serif. And then the S, look, it comes below and whoops. The S comes and touches the H. And notice that H, how it angles out. And then the T shares a serif with the S. Again, they have the curves. And the E comes down.
Look at the A in the next line. It has a serif on one side, but not the other one that's tucked into the R.
She wants to leave room in there for that R curve.
Yeah.
And one thing Beth in her class on Built Up Romans pointed out, see this flowing swelling on the top of the S? Somebody had made just like a hook on the end. She said that is not Romans, that's italic. And see, you can see this flowing serif there. So that was really helpful to me that Beth pointed that out. She gave that critique. Because we saw quite a few of those hooks, and they were, again, now I'll always think those are italic, but the serifs on the Romans just gradually get wider. They're not hooks normally. Okay, and here's that same extension on the E, but it's the serif of the T. Okay, and then down below, we talked about the V touches the P, and then the P has a serif that goes down and touches the extension on the E. And she's carrying that E throughout. She's always got that extension on that E. And here's another thing Liesbet does, which I love, but I decided it's not me. I had that in my first piece and I just redid the whole thing because I just thought I'm just copying her. It's not me. And I didn't want to just copy. But she's got that. It's filling space. And then look at those two M's sharing that serif. This M comes down and touches the top of the G. And this E, it looks like the widest part of it maybe touches that N in front of it. Let's see. No, it doesn't. It comes so close, but it doesn't actually touch. And then the next line, the L touches the A. And then the A and the N share the serif. There's that same N where it's coming way down. I think maybe all her N's are like that in this piece. I don't, this one comes down too, not so drastically, but it comes down. And her M's are bouncing like that too. So when we were talking about keep your things in the same family, do them the same, well, she is doing that here. And then this N touches the end of that D and the E. Now here we don't have the extension up, it goes out on this E. The one E that's different, it actually goes to the left instead of up. And it's got a serif on the top where the others had them. Well, she's got this E here, had a serif on the top. Some have them on the bottom. And then here sharing a stem, W and A. And then here, so it was pointed out that the A without the serif up here, well, there's space between, but here they actually join. And then the serif just kind of goes in the same direction as the C. And then look at that curve that's the same as the one on the A, the crossbar on the H, the same style as on the A. And then it's only got the serif on one side and it's got it, it's balanced. It's got it up at the top, touching the bottom of the T. And then this T just takes off after that. And it's got these, so I was playing today with a piece. I'm trying to think what I'll do. And I had some T's like this and I thought it's too many and I made one like this. And I suppose that I've been influenced by Liesbet, but also other teachers that not all, you don't always have to have the exact. And she didn't only use this one place, this serif. These serifs are on the tops of some of these other letters. I'm thinking maybe like this E, it's on the top of that E. So you don't use it only one place, but she's got the different serif. Any questions on this one? And here's Guido Gazella again. There's his name again.
So she influenced Andrea Wunderlich in her letter forms
I don't know.
because
You know,
you can
let
see
me
it.
say
You
that,
can see it.
okay. You know what?
Yeah.
I'm sure all those calligraphers
Yeah.
influence each other's, but I will also say that Liesbet, they give their credit to David Jones,
Oh yeah.
who was the early 1900s.
Yeah.
He probably most of you have heard about it. And he was influenced by the funky letters in the Colosseum. They've got the Trajan column, and nearby they have the Colosseum with all its signs that those guys obviously were not trained professionally. And they were, I found them so interesting.
That is when I fell in love with Romans in
Yeah.
the Colosseum, looking at those letters.
Yeah, they're just so interesting. You know, those guys don't know what they're doing, but they were just so that you were drawn to them. So
If anybody's interested, on Sunday, the David Jones Research is presenting inscriptions for the very young, the town child's alphabet.
can you put that in the chat?
Possibly.
Or just, I mean, I didn't
Yeah,
quite
yes.
get what all.
Yeah,
what
but
you said.
the David Jones Research is both in the UK and here in the United States, and they've had quite a few webinars on either exhibitions or work
Oh,
of research that's
oh,
happening.
so that's
I-
an organization called David Jones Research?
Yeah, I will see if I can pop that in the chat now.
Yeah, just a
for
name
you.
you can
Yeah,
Google.
yeah, yeah,
You.
yeah.
I've not ever heard of that. I've
Yeah,
had a couple
through
classes.
Washington, they have whole conferences and events, and they look
Wow.
at both his writing, and then, so I'm more interested in seeing his artwork and his influence on calligraphy, so,
Yeah.
yeah. There's still time to register for it, so
Okay, I
see
will
if I
look.
can put something in.
I will look into that. Okay, and now this is a piece that this is more modern of Liesbet's. Those others I bought before I ever knew her. The proprietor at the shop sold those to me because they were affordable. And one of them actually has a spot on it, so she gave it to me for free. And instead of 1,200 euros, I think the prints were 30 euros each. So those were within my budget. But now Liesbet she's got this closer to this letter style, but this was done maybe 15 years ago. And she gave her influence, I'm sure David Jones still is an influence, but she also attributed it to a family friend, John Skelton. He was from, I think, Wales, and did runes. And he was a carver, stone carver. And many of you know, her father was a calligrapher and calligraphy teacher. And all 5 of the children eventually took up lettering in some form. And so he knew via Villa Toots, and he knew many of the master calligraphers of the day, and some of them would come visit them. And John Skelton visited a few times, and Liesbet actually has a piece he made in her house. Actually, it's out in her garden now. But she was influenced by his runes. And that made me look at runes too more when I travel now. So she's gone on these pieces. You'll see some pieces now that are not, that she's doing. They aren't tall and narrow like this, but this was her, she attributed these to the Welsh runes. And this is in French, and I know she told me what it meant, but I don't remember, and I didn't bother to look it up today. Somebody in here might know French and can tell us. But look at that I, that fun I, and look, there's that same M with the tall, and look at almost all of these, well, not almost all, but many of these touch the top and the bottom. This E touches the top and the bottom, but this I bounces in there, and there's a dot that's got gold applied on it. And then a U. And this U kind of reminds me of the tops of the M, the way the stem comes down, and then there's that serif just kicks off. And this serif kicks off on this X, and notice, well, these are all narrow. And this is what I've noticed in her letters recently. She kind of jogs over on them. Those are a style that she's been exploring a lot in her pieces, and it gets more and more pronounced in some of her recent work. And we just, I don't know if I don't know what that letter is. I don't know if it's an L, a funny L, or what, and I'd have to look that up. But look at how this A comes up here, touches on one side on the bottom. There's that U again. I think that's a T. I don't think that's a Y. I think it's a T. And it's got that same jog. Look how the line comes up a little higher on the right than on the left. And there's that I just nests in there. And here's an L, which makes me think this may be an L here, but I'd have to look it up. And then B, and look, that B has that same stem. So there a lot of these letters, we talk about families. Well, if you're going to make a change, this style has these stems coming up or down. And this R doesn't come all the way up, but it comes up. There's that U again, the L again. The E doesn't necessarily touch. That's one of the few that doesn't. Then the R has a stem going up. And then here is a Q. It's touching on the top and the bottom. And a nice little apostrophe. It's just got that same angular shape as the letters do. And now this E is touching on the bottom, and it's got a little stem going up. And then there's that T, that jogging T. Another E, there's that same I with the gilded dot. So she's got these 3 I's with the gilded dots. And Risa in Visigothic Versals taught us about this rhythm. There you are, pulling your I across with those 3 gilded dots. And then here's the N running into the D, and the D has those stems. That N has that stem. And then this final E goes off the side. And it's got the extension on it. This E didn't have it. This one has it. So you can see those ligatures. Very beautiful. Okay, so any questions before I take this off of share? Okay.
Could you put that first one, that first example up again, please?
Okay, just a minute. And I did close the blinds trying to get rid of the glare because these all have glass on them. They're hanging in my hallway. I call it my Liesbet wall. And across the hall on the other side is my Bruges wall with Eve and Yoka and a few others. Okay, and did you see what you wanted to see? Any questions, comments?
No, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. All right, let me see if I can get my camera back. Okay, I got it. Oops, hit it twice. All right, so questions, anything you wanted to share? We can talk about a project, but I'll let you make comments if you have any. So I thought about different projects, and I'll talk about different ones, and it's up to all of you. And I have my Sue Houghton book. I didn't move. I was at this spot, but I cannot figure out what I did with her book when I put it away. So I'm not going to be showing it, but maybe Ellen will. In the back, she had like a gardening journal. And I thought it had very simple plants, and I like plants because they don't have to be perfect and they still look like plants. Or you can collage. That wouldn't be for everyone. Not everybody's into garden journals, but that's a thought. But what I really thought might be something that everybody would be interested in would be a little piece like Liesbet's pieces. And I meant to pick up a piece to show you. I can send it out. It was a piece I did in her class. It was Happy Birthday. If that's all, just 2 words, and I did a thank you, and they're for cards. I thought you could do a small piece with just a couple words. So earlier we studied Sherry Thornton, and we did little 3x3 word paintings. Well, you could do that, or maybe bigger than 3x3. I recently bought some frames that have cutouts on the mat for 5x5. I also have frames 10 by 10. So I thought that people might want to just make a small piece. Nothing that would take a huge amount of time. But if we did a small piece and had that an ongoing thing, we could use some of those techniques that Liesbet shows to refine them. So it could be something you could do a thumbnail with the skeleton Romans that we've learned. And then next time we could talk about either doing built up. We could have a little lesson on built up Romans, just a quickie, because this is a small study group. And you can also take Beth Lee's class for more in depth. But, or they can be drawn. And I would say, I would leave that to everybody. Those taking Beth's class right now might prefer to do built up caps. And maybe I'll do a sketch in built up caps just to practice it. But I think I want my final one to be drawn, just because I can get personally, I'm pretty messy with my built up caps. But I wonder, is there interest in doing just a small piece, 2 or 3 words, 1 word? Let me put this on gallery. Let me take myself off spotlight and gallery. So what kind of interest do we have on doing, like, for next time? I'm thinking we can have a study group session the first Friday in December, which is, usually I don't, but I missed October due to a wedding I had to go to. December 6th, or yeah, 6th. And if you can't come that night because we're getting into the holidays, maybe you watch recording. But we could aim to have thumbnails by our next session. Does that interest the majority here?
So are the thumbnails just like sketches of how you would?
Here's my
Some
messy
of Liz-
thumbnail. I mean, this is not what I'm going to do. This is me sketching. And I made notes on what I would change, but I'm just playing around, and I'm not even going to do those words. But I wrote that I need to space more widely, and I need the top is too squatty, etc. So I did these thumbnails. But when we did
Cherries.
when we did them before, we did the sketches with Sherry Thornton, we just did pages of thumbnails. I finally came up with something, maybe after 3 pages of thumbnails. But it is fun just in your spare time to sit with a pencil and sketch these, and then you can take it further. But I'm thinking that first Liesbet thing where they look like built up Romans, but you can draw them if you want. Those could be what you're aiming for, but this is your call, what you want to learn. And then we can have little, we want to start going away from the skeletons. They're great for the basics, and we'll talk briefly about spacing next time. But then I think we want to start going to broader Romans.
Kristi, you just made me think of this little tiny piece I did in a solar nib
Just a minute.
class. Okay.
I got you spotlighted.
Okay. Forget the lettering and forget whatever's on here, but it's tiny.
Yes, Jenny Allen did that too, and she gave us a little lesson, and she gave us little pieces.
Am I in focus?
No, but we get the gist.
Okay, you get the gist.
Yeah, they're like monoline.
They're monoline it's not Romans and it's not built up, but just the gist of it is this is, I believe, a 3-inch or 4-inch frame.
Yeah, so that could be
What is it? 4-inch.
yeah.
And
So
we could draw a little mat around it.
yeah,
Brenda Broadbent used to do small pieces like that.
Yeah.
I think
I don't remember who the teacher was.
I think when Jenny took it,
Yeah,
I think it was Brenda, and I remember her, maybe that black was gel pen, and then they were like sticks of ink tents or something, some kind of sticks to color in.
I don't know, but it was
Yeah.
a very long time ago.
Yeah, but Jenny made us like a happy birthday on her birthday, and they were really fun. I remember, I did not take that, but I remember Jenny showing us, and we really enjoyed it. Okay, here is Wendy.
Wendy has one.
She took it too, I guess.
Yep.
Wait,
Oh,
you're
you're
mute,
muted.
Wendy.
Yeah. This one is
So where did you do this one?
this one is Brenda Broadbent's.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I see it signed.
But they're small, they're tiny little pieces.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean,
those
they
have a
really just
lot.
fit. They really just fit right in your hand. Yeah.
So those have a lot more words, and people are welcome to do that. I just didn't want to, I wanted to make it easy for those who don't have a lot of time, that you could do just one word or more. Just similar to the word paintings we did where they were just a couple words, but those were skeleton, press and release, and these would be built up, or at least a built up look. And we'll cover some more techniques in future sessions to do broad.
So Kristi,
Yes.
you mentioned the garden journal in the book, and I'm looking at Sue Houghton's book on the garden journal. She does have a lot of illustrations here. Did you want us to incorporate that along with the lettering or not?
No, that I just gave that as a possibility for someone. I'm not going to assign that. I started then thinking about the Liesbet thing as something more people might want to do, but I could use a garden journal, so that is another option for me. So I wanted to share that as options. I'm just now getting into, we didn't garden for years. We have squirrels, and we're on 2.5 acres, squirrels, rats, you name it, they eat everything. But my husband built cages, and I learned that those animals don't eat the onions and garlic. So I now have a small garden. So a garden journal could be handy for learning. But so Anne, if you want to make that journal, you are welcome. I just thought, let's get us all working on some stuff. And that garden journal was done in italic, but we could do it in Romans, whoever wanted to. So we're almost out of time, but I'm going to issue that challenge that you do some piece, and then we'll share them next time, and we will have a little lesson on moving into broader letters. And I think what we'll start with maybe is drawing them in, building them up with pencil, and next time also outlines. Just do, because the built up, you can then outline it and move on to that. Because when Liesbet did them, she colored in everything so that she could see the weight and get a good picture of how it looked. It was done in graphite. You just colored it in dark, and you could see the space, how things worked. And then she would work with it, end up with an outline to paint.
So Kristi, would it be better if people submitted it to you so you could actually show them on a screen?
They can, or we'll spotlight,
Okay.
whatever works out. And if
Okay.
anyone wants to send it to me with questions, I'm happy to do that, but anyway, I'm just suggesting for next time we have thumbnails, and pick a thumbnail that you like, and with one or more words. And if you are really like a lot of work, you can have a lot of words, but
Can I just chime in here on the
yes.
on
Yeah.
the concept of thumbnails? So I've done art for my job forever and ever. And one thing that a lot of us who do art like to present concepts to clients and that kind of thing, we use a lot of tracing paper. So you can just draw something rough and lay a piece of tracing paper over top of it, trace over top of that, and make whatever changes you want. And you can do iteration after iteration, little tiny changes or big changes. It's just a really fast way. And then you can just throw in the trash whatever ones you didn't like, and then you can refine the ones that you did. But it allows you a way to just make gradual changes, quick and easy. So
That's actually what Liesbet does. And when she gets her design concept, when she keeps blowing it up, she's making the changes on tracing and making changes on tracing paper. Thank you for bringing that up. And one thing that you can see with her, if you see her studio, she's got files where she doesn't have the one she doesn't like, but she's got these different, because then she could take it and make another change. So she's got all the iterations that she liked that she can go back to them later should she want. And these are small little, tracing paper, a few pieces of tracing paper doesn't take up that much space. They're very minimalistic over there.
Kristi, we have a raised hand from
yeah.
Zelda.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm talking now.
Okay,
Thanks,
just
Anne.
wait a
Thank you.
minute, I don't see it. Okay, let me go to screen 2. Okay, I don't see the hand. But maybe Nan, Nan,
I can see it.
you spotlight her?
Yeah, I can.
Thank you.
Great. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
This is actually my first time in the here with you guys. Thank you, Nan, for
Welcome.
providing that. Thank you. And I wanted to know, I actually found out about this through the SFC newsletter. So I was wondering, do you issue some kind of invitation every time you meet? I'd never heard about the class before.
So let me ask, are you a member?
I am.
Okay, so because I like to keep this fairly cozy, I only put out the invitation to members of the San Diego chapter in email, but I do always put it on the website.
Okay.
It's always there. Everybody is welcome, but the problem is when I put out invitations, we get 400 people for some of our programs. And so I just think that's too much to handle. And if I get 400 people, I have to buy an add-on for Zoom, etc. So we keep it within our chapter. What chapter do you belong to?
So I have 2 chapters. I have the SGV, which
Okay,
is San Gabriel
San
Valley.
Gabriel.
Yeah. And then also Solar Nibs.
Oh, yeah. Okay. What we could do, Zelda, if I remember, because I'm always way over my head, but if I remember, I can go ahead and forward it to you. We have Anne Ann Bystrom. She's not a member of our chapter, but she comes all the time. She just keeps her eye on the website. We want people from any chapter. You don't need to be part of our chapter. I just don't want 400 people. That's all.
Got it.
So you're welcome.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay.
How do we watch the replay of this recording?
I send it out to everybody who registered. I'll send it out. It takes from 1 to 24 hours to process, just depending on the internet and what's going on my, I guess, my computer. So as soon as it's ready, I send it out in an email to everyone who registered for this.
Great.
And it comes in, so you just, if you don't see it, check your spam. It comes from Society for Calligraphy at wildapricot.org. Wild Apricot is our computer platform.
Okay, thank
But
you.
everyone will get it, and whoever registers gets the handouts and the Zoom. So I'll schedule it again for December 6th. I'll go out and put it on the website as soon as I get a chance.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Mm-hmm. All right. And Lori, I see Lori, she's on our San Diego board. Good to see you. We don't see her that often. She's in Washington. You're on mute, Lori. So, okay. Any questions? We're past our time, but I'm happy to answer any questions. If anybody has any suggestions, you can always email me.
I'll see you next weekend, Kristi.
Oh, yes, we have our, Sharon emailed me and I thought, that's next weekend already. We have an in-person workshop in San Diego.
Thank you so much for agreeing.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed it.
Okay, thanks
Thank you all.
everybody for coming.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank
You're
you, Kristi.
wonderful,
Thank you.
Kristi.
you.
You're
Thanks.
just
you.
wonderful.
Oh, you're sweet.
Thank you so
Thank
much. That
you
was
all.
wonderful. Yeah.
I'm
Thank you.
trying. Good night, everyone. Have a good month.
Bye. Thank you.
Have a good day, Nan.